You know that feeling when someone asks what you make in a year, and for a split second, you're not even thinking about the number. You're thinking about how to explain it, whether it sounds like enough, whether it sounds like too little, or somehow worse, too much to say out loud. Here's something most people never stop to notice. The number on your paycheck doesn't just decide what you can buy. It decides what you fear, what you tolerate, who you compare yourself to, and eventually, who you become. Most people think that only starts to matter once you're talking about millions. 6 figures, 7 figures. Some far-off number that feels like someone else's problem. But the truth is, the shift starts much earlier than that, and it happens in stages. Each one quietly rewriting how you think long before you're anywhere close to rich. My name is Nathan Cole, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. Not as numbers in an account, but as the quiet force that shapes who people become over time. If you've ever wondered why the same person can feel like two completely different people depending on what's hitting their bank account each month, stick around, because you're probably going to recognize the exact moment your life started changing, even if you didn't notice it at the time. So let's walk through it, one number at a time, starting from the bottom, because that's where this story has to begin. You pick up the phone, then put it back down. Pick it up again. You've rehearsed the line twice already. Hi, I need to push my cleaning to next month. Something came up. And it still doesn't come out right the third time either, but you dial anyway before you can talk yourself out of it. The receptionist says that's fine, no problem. We'll see you in 6 weeks. You hang up feeling like you got away with something, even though nothing was won here except time. 20 minutes later, your hand is hovering in a grocery aisle. 2 products, 40 cents apart. You already know which one you're taking before you even look at the price again. It isn't really about the 40 cents anymore. It's about proving to yourself that you're still paying attention. The car makes a sound on the drive home that it hasn't made before. A low grinding right as you slow down for a stop sign. You turn the radio off to listen for it again, then you turn it back on because you don't actually want to hear it a second time. At the next light, you ease off the brakes slower than usual, like being gentle with the car might convince it to stay quiet a little longer. Rent's due in 9 days. If it's the alternator, that's $400 you don't have. If it's something else, maybe it's nothing. You decide without any real evidence that it's probably nothing. You have to decide that. There's no version of tonight where you sleep if you don't. Pay the phone bill or fix the thing your car's been doing since spring. Buy the shoes your kid needs or let the dentist appointment slide again. Every decision is a trade, whether you asked for it to be one or not. Your phone buzzes. A friend asking if you're free for dinner Friday. You type can't work thing before you've really thought about it, because that's easier than explaining that $25 for a plate of food is $25 that has somewhere else to be. The lie comes faster than the truth would have. It always does at this stage. By the end of the week, you're exhausted in a way that doesn't quite make sense. You didn't work more hours than anyone else. You didn't do anything especially hard. But your brain never really clocked out because it kept quietly solving problems that hadn't happened yet. The alternator that might not exist, the appointment you keep almost booking, the dinner you keep almost saying yes to. Research on scarcity shows that financial pressure consumes mental bandwidth, the attention you'd normally use to plan, solve problems, and think ahead. You're not less sharp. Part of your brain is simply busy running emergency math in the background. The car turns out to be fine. A rock caught somewhere it shouldn't be, probably. But you don't find that out until 3 days later. 3 days of quietly bracing for $400 that never actually came due. And that's the part almost nobody explains about this stage. It's not just the bad news that costs you, it's every version of bad news you had to live through in your head before finding out it wasn't real. But something does shift eventually, and it starts, of all places, with a piece of paper. The lease is sitting on the counter, and you sign it before you can second guess it. Just your name this time. Nobody co-signing, nobody splitting the water bill 3 ways, nobody's dishes in the sink that aren't yours. The water pressure's bad. The kitchen light flickers if you don't jiggle the switch just right. You notice both things while you're signing and sign anyway, because none of it changes the fact that your name is the only one on this piece of paper. That's the first sign something changed. Not the apartment, your stomach, staying exactly where it's supposed to be while you're doing it. You're at the grocery store again, different aisle this time, and you catch yourself not adding anything up under your breath. You just put things in the cart. It takes you a second to notice you did that, the way you'd notice if a headache you'd had for years suddenly wasn't there anymore. The car keeps running without any new sounds, and one night, out of nowhere, you actually say it out loud to nobody in particular. Good car, like it deserves the compliment, like you're relieved enough to thank an engine. There's a little money sitting in a second account now. Not much. Enough that if the alternator actually needed fixing, you could fix it without doing 3 days of quiet math first. It's thin. Fragile. The kind of amount that wouldn't survive a real emergency. But it exists, and its existence does something to your chest that's hard to name. Vanguard ran research on exactly this feeling a while back. Even a couple $1,000s in savings measurably increases someone's sense of financial security, out of proportion to how small the number actually is. Not because $2,000 solves anything by itself, because it's the first proof you have that you're capable of not being at zero. That you didn't just get lucky once, that you can do this again. You're not celebrating money at this stage, you're celebrating evidence. But relief, it turns out, has a short shelf life. You still open the banking app most nights, even when there's nothing new to check. Old habit. You still feel a flicker of something when a bill hits a day earlier than expected, even though you know logically that you're fine. Better isn't the same as safe, and some part of you keeps checking anyway, just to make sure the good news is still true. Because the moment you get a taste of not drowning, you start noticing exactly how far the shore still is. The relief that felt so enormous 6 months ago has quietly turned into a baseline. Something you've already adjusted to. Something that no longer feels like enough on its own. You didn't get worse at appreciating what you have. You just built a new floor to stand on. And floors, once you're used to them, stop feeling like something you should be grateful for. That's the part nobody warns you about this stage. The breathing room doesn't stay remarkable for long. It just becomes normal, and normal has a way of turning its attention toward whatever's next. Your sister's number is still sitting somewhere in the back of your mind 3 months later when a guy from your old job mentions his at a bar. Not on purpose. He's not bragging. Not really. He's just answering a question you asked, the way you'd answer if someone asked you the same thing. Same job title as yours, just a different company down the street. Meaningfully more money. He says it the way you'd mention what you had for lunch, completely unaware of what it's about to do to the person sitting across from him. You laugh at whatever came right before it. Your face does the thing faces do when they're buying time. But something in your chest has already started running the math. The same automatic reflex from the phone call with your sister, except this time there's a real person attached to the number. Someone whose apartment you've actually seen pictures of. By the numbers, you're doing fine. Steady job. A place that's actually yours. A fridge that's full instead of strategically empty the way it used to be. If someone looked at your life from a photo, they'd probably tell you that you made it. So why does made it feel like the wrong phrase for whatever this is? It's not really about the number the guy mentioned. It's about what that number apparently buys somewhere else. A bigger apartment. One with actual water pressure. Not thinking twice about a rideshare home at midnight instead of waiting 40 minutes for the bus. A vacation that didn't require an actual spreadsheet before you'd let yourself book it. You don't evaluate your own life in absolute terms, even though you'd like to think you do. You evaluate it against whoever happens to be standing next to you when the topic comes up, whoever answered the phone, whoever's sitting on the next bar stool. Which means how well you think you're doing was never really just about your bank account. It was about him tonight, and it'll be about someone else next week. $60,000 can feel like two completely different amounts of money depending on the room you're standing in. In one room, it's more than enough, plenty, something to be proud of. In this one, it's the thing that keeps your jaw tight for the rest of the night, long after the guy's moved on to a different topic entirely and forgotten he ever said the number out loud. Life has stopped being chaos. That part's real, and some nights you actually remember to notice it. But it hasn't become freedom yet either. You can finally see the view from a few floors up, clearly, for the first time in your life. And that view is exactly what makes staying exactly where you are start to feel heavier than it did back when you couldn't see anything above you at all. The more clearly you can see up, the more obvious it becomes that you're still down here. And once you can see it that clearly, you start looking for the thing that might actually close the gap. You're back in a grocery store on a random Tuesday, reaching for the good coffee, the kind you used to pick up and put back twice before deciding against it. This time you just take it. You're already past the shelf, cart half full, when you notice what you did. No hovering, no math, just a decision. Made the way decisions are supposed to be made. Based on what you wanted, not what you could survive on. You stand there in the aisle for a second longer than you need to, holding the bag, trying to figure out why that felt different from every other purchase you've made this year. It wasn't more money than usual. It wasn't a special occasion. It was just nothing. No alarm went off in your head. And that absence is the thing you can't stop turning over in your hands, right there next to the cereal. That's the moment, if there is one, not a raise you can point to on a calendar, not one dramatic afternoon, just the quiet realization that the alarm which used to go off in your head at every single purchase has, at some point, you genuinely can't pin down, stopped ringing. You book a flight home for the holidays without opening a spreadsheet first. Your laptop dies on a Sunday and you order a new one that same afternoon. No guilt spiral. No 3 days of telling yourself you'll wait until next month. Your sister calls again, mentions another number, and you notice it land differently this time. Still there. Just quieter. For years, without really noticing you were doing it, you'd been running towards some version of safety you couldn't fully picture. You just knew with total certainty that you didn't have it yet. Now that you finally have some, there's a strange, almost disorienting silence sitting exactly where all that running used to be. You go looking for something to worry about, out of habit more than necessity, and you can't quite find it the way you used to. It's an unfamiliar kind of unsettling, having nothing urgent enough to fill the space. And a mind that finally has room doesn't stay quiet for long. If money isn't the main problem anymore, what exactly are you supposed to be building with it? You catch yourself asking this in the shower, in the car, in the 15 minutes before you fall asleep, and you don't have an answer ready. You spent years assuming that once money stopped being the problem, the answer to what do I actually want would just be sitting there waiting for you, fully formed, obvious. Instead, you just get the question, nothing else. This is probably the most important shift in the entire story, and it's easy to miss precisely because nothing about it looks like a milestone. It doesn't come with a bigger apartment or a nicer car sitting in the driveway as proof. It arrives as an absence, a silence where a constant, low-grade emergency used to live every single day for years. Most people never even notice this question arrive. They're too busy chasing the next number to hear it over the noise. You heard it, and that changes everything that comes next. You call your mom before you've even finished reading the offer letter twice, standing in your kitchen with your phone wedged against your shoulder. You made it, she says, and there's real pride sitting in her voice. The kind you've been quietly hoping to hear since you were about 19. For 30 seconds, standing right there in your kitchen, you actually believe her completely. Then the first paycheck lands 2 weeks later. You open the direct deposit notification expecting one number and get a smaller one. Taxes already taken their cut before you even had a chance to see what you thought you'd earned. You do the math twice, like maybe you misread it, but it's the same number both times. Your cousin texts a few days after that, asking if you can help him out this month, just until his next paycheck clears. A friend starts asking you questions about index funds over drinks. Like crossing some invisible line on a spreadsheet turned you into somebody who has opinions about this now. Someone at a party hearing what you do says, "must be nice," with a little laugh, and you laugh along with it too, even though something about the comment sits wrong in your stomach for the rest of the night, in a way you can't quite explain to anyone, including yourself. To the people who knew you before, you've clearly arrived. To someone making twice what you make, you're just, well, normal. Maybe a little behind. Both of those things are true about you at the exact same moment, and nobody warns you how strange that actually feels until you're the one standing in the middle of it, getting pulled in two directions by two different definitions of the same number. The jump from struggling to stable did enormous work on how you felt, back at 90,000. This jump from stable to what people call comfortable does far less dollar for dollar than you assumed it would sitting in your kitchen on the phone with your mom. So the six figures didn't answer the question that showed up back when things first went quiet. It just moved you through one door into a longer hallway, one you didn't know was there until you were already standing in it, looking down a corridor with several more doors in it. But something real does shift underneath the disappointment. Something worth noticing even though it doesn't come with confetti. Before, you were chasing money to survive whatever came next. Now, for the first time you can actually remember clearly, you're chasing it to choose what comes next. That's not nothing. It just was never supposed to be the finish line, no matter what your mom's voice sounded like on the phone that day. You say the thing out loud in the meeting, no apology wrapped around it first, no 3 sentences of hedging before you get to the actual point. Your boss blinks, mildly surprised, and then just moves on to the next agenda item. No fallout, no awkward pause that follows you into the hallway afterward. And on the walk back to your desk, you realize what actually let you say it that plainly. Some part of you already knew that if this job disappeared tomorrow, you'd be fine for months while you figured out the next one. You didn't decide to feel that way. You just noticed mid-sentence that you already did. Money starts buying something that isn't a thing at all. It buys the ability to say no, and say it without rehearsing it first. You book 2 weeks off for a trip and actually leave your email closed the entire time, not glancing at it once from the airport, which is new. You hire someone to clean the apartment every other week, someone else to handle the yard at your parents' place, since your dad's knees have been bad. Small transactions that quietly buy back hours you used to spend on Saturdays being tired instead of doing something you wanted to do. The person who can walk away from a deal has more leverage than the person who can't, no matter how politely the conversation goes on the surface. You're negotiating your job, your time, your relationships from a completely different position now than you were even 2 years ago. Nobody says any of this out loud in the room. It's just sitting there underneath everything, changing the shape of every conversation you have. Then your phone buzzes on a Tuesday night. A close friend, someone you've known since college, needs $3,000 by Friday. Rent, and a car repair landing in the same week. You transfer it before you've even finished reading the whole text, barely pausing, because it genuinely doesn't move anything meaningful for your month. For him, on the other end of that transfer, it's the entire difference between making rent and not making it. You helped. It was clearly the right thing to do, and you don't regret it for a second. But something settles into the space between you afterward that wasn't there before, a distance you didn't put there on purpose and can't quite explain away, even lying in bed that night trying to name it. It's not that you changed as a person somewhere along the way. It's that your two lives simply stopped rhyming the way they used to back when you were both broke together, laughing about the same things, worried about the same Friday. That gap, once it opens even a little, doesn't stay the same size for long. The conversation at dinner shifts, and nobody actually announces that it happened. 1 minute someone's talking about a flight deal they found. The next minute the woman across from you is asking which advisor everyone uses. And a guy you just met is nodding along. Like, that's a completely normal question to ask a table full of people you're meeting for the first time. Nobody's comparing prices on anything anymore. The whole shape of the conversation has just moved somewhere you don't remember agreeing to go. You didn't apply to be at this table. Nobody handed you an invitation with new rules printed on it. It just formed around you gradually, the way a group of friends changes over 10 years without any single dramatic falling out. Just people drifting toward whoever's life currently rhymes with theirs. Halfway through the meal, your mind drifts somewhere else entirely. Unprompted. Back to a dinner years ago. A different table. Where you sat quietly while someone mentioned a trip that sounded completely unremarkable to them and completely out of reach to you. You remember the specific tightness that showed up in your chest that night, the quick, involuntary math you did in your head before you could stop yourself, converting their casual sentence into rent, into groceries, into things you actually needed. Now you're the one who just mentioned a trip at this table without thinking twice about saying it out loud. It doesn't make you feel superior, sitting there noticing this happening to you in real time. If anything, it makes you miss something you didn't know you had back then. A kind of simplicity. A table where everyone was solving roughly the same problems, where nobody had to translate their sentence before saying it out loud. Your things haven't actually gotten that much nicer, not in any way a stranger would notice walking past you on the street. What's changed is quieter than that. Your entire day-to-day reality is now running on a different set of assumptions than the ones most of the people you grew up around are still living inside. Same city, maybe even the same neighborhood you started in. A completely different set of questions running underneath it. You're comparing two flights side by side. And the cheaper one has a 4-hour layover sitting right in the middle of it. You click the more expensive one without really weighing it, because somewhere in the last few years, the question in your head quietly changed shape. It's not, how much does this cost anymore? It's, how much time does this actually give me back? You notice a few days later that you've also just stopped bringing up money in conversations at all, even casually, even in passing. Because you've tested it a few times, and even a small offhand comment starts landing like something it wasn't meant to be. Not long after that flight, you're sitting in a very different kind of meeting, one where you're not the person asking for a chance at something. You're the one deciding which idea gets funded, which of the two people across the table gets a shot they wouldn't have gotten without you sitting in that particular chair. Walking out afterward for one strange second, a memory surfaces completely out of nowhere. A check engine light sitting on a dashboard for months, back when fixing it meant not paying something else that same month. You can picture the exact stretch of road where you first heard that grinding sound. It feels like it happened to somebody else entirely. Some other person's Tuesday. In a very real sense, it did. Money has stopped being something you spend and started being something you deploy, structure, point at problems instead of react to. It's stopped measuring what you personally have and started measuring what you're actually capable of moving in the world around you. How many other people's Fridays you can quietly change without ever meeting them. None of this happened as one dramatic leap you could point to on a calendar. Every stage quietly built the one after it. The margin you didn't have at 20,000, the relief at 40, the comparison at 60, the silence at 90, the hallway at 120, the freedom and the distance that came with it at 180, the new unspoken rules at 300. Every version of you is still in there somewhere, underneath whichever one is currently sitting in that meeting, making that decision, closing that laptop. Somebody asks what you make in a year, at a dinner, in passing, the way people ask anything. And that same split second happens. The one that's been happening this whole time at every single stage. Except now for the first time. You actually notice it happening while it's happening. Because it was never really about the number. It never was. Not even back at the very beginning. It was about every version of yourself standing quietly behind you in that instant. The one rehearsing a phone call before he could make himself dial it. The one who took the generic cereal off the shelf just to prove he was still paying attention. The one who heard a number at a bar and felt his jaw tighten before he understood why. You were all of them, not separate people scattered across your life. Just one person standing at different points on a staircase that never actually stopped moving beneath your feet, even on the days it felt like solid ground. The paycheck never just decided what you could buy. It decided what you feared, what you tolerated, who you compared yourself to, and eventually, who you became. Somewhere out there, right now, a number is already at work on you. Quietly. The same way it always has been. The only question left is which version of you it's currently building.